Hello, everybody. I hope that you are all doing fine. This is our first lesson, and in the beginning, I would like to point a few things. First of all, I'm going to teach you this component, which is medical terms. Now, in the beginning, I would like to encourage you to study on daily basis. Do not delay anything because this is a new material for you. There are many words you are going to come across. Maybe this is the first time for you to come across them. Sometimes there are long words, so you need to study on daily basis. The other thing I want to point out is that you keep your course books next to you, because sometimes we refer to the course books for certain information. Now let's start with our first lesson, which is chapter 1 about basic word structure. And this is lesson 1. Now, on page 2, if you refer to your books on page 2, you can see that the medical words usually are made up of parts. So a medical word, mostly it is of more than one part. Sometimes it is only one, but mostly it is more than one part. So you need to learn the meanings of the individual parts in order to be able to understand the meaning of the whole term. Now, what are the parts that form the medical words? The first part is called the root, and you know the meaning of root. The root here in language, it means the main part of a medical word, and it is often the body part. The second part of a medical word could be a suffix, because it's not always the case that medical terms have suffixes. So if there is a suffix, then what is a suffix? A letter or a group of letters added to the end of a word to make another word. And we have an example here. If you look at ly, for example, in the word quickly, or ness in sadness. So quickly, what is the original word? It is quick. If you add ly to it, it becomes another word. Again, we have sad. If you add ness to it at the end, it becomes another word. So this is the suffix. The third part is the prefixes. And prefixes are letters or group of letters added to the beginning of a word to change its meaning. Maybe you have come across this again in language. For example, the word happy, if you put un before it, it becomes unhappy. And we change the meaning of the word here. If you have heat and you put a prefix before that, which is pre, it becomes preheat. And it is a new meaning. So we need to, let's say, break down a medical term into its parts first, then give the meanings of the individual parts to be able to understand the meaning of the full term. Now here I want to point out something. It's not necessary that all these three parts be found in one term. Sometimes you might find a term with a root only, or a term with root and suffix, sometimes prefix and suffix. So it's not necessary that all these three parts to be found in a term, in all terms. Now, let's take an example here. For example, perineuritis. This is a medical term. How to know the meaning of this term? You have to break it down into its parts. As you can see, the vertical lines used to divide the word into its parts are clear. So the first part is peri, and then we have ner, and then we have itis. So here we have three parts. And peri here is a prefix, ner is a root, itis is a suffix. The meanings, as you can see, peri means around. In this case, we need to learn the meanings of the parts. Ner means nerve, and itis means inflammation. Now, how to put these three meanings together to get the meaning of the full term? We have to start, if there is a suffix, we have to start with the suffix first. The meaning of the suffix, which means the meaning inflammation here should be put first. So inflammation around a nerve. And this is the full meaning of the word. We have to start with the meaning of the suffix and then go back to the beginning. So here, if we give them numbers, for example, 1, 2, 3, peri 1, ner 2, itis 3, we start with 3 and then go to 1 and 2. But we use this method if we have a suffix. If we do not have a suffix, then we start from the beginning, and we will come across examples of that. But this is the general method that we follow. To start with a suffix if there is a suffix, to start with the meaning and then go back to the beginning of the parts. Let's have another example, which is hepatitis. Here, hepatitis is made up of two parts, as you can see, hepat and itis. Now, itis, we have learned before that it means inflammation, and it is a suffix. And hepat here is a root, which means liver. Now, how to give the meaning of the full word? As we said, we have to start with the meaning of the suffix, which is inflammation here. So the meaning will be inflammation of the liver. And as you can see here, we added words, new words like of, the, sometimes in or on. These simple words we have to add to make the meaning correct from the point of view of language. We cannot say inflammation liver here, just to put the words as they are, inflammation liver. It is not clear. So you have to make a meaningful phrase. A meaningful phrase. In this case, you have to refer to language. So it becomes, the meaning, the full meaning here becomes what? Inflammation of the liver. And this is the meaning. Now, let's see how to define a medical term in detail. As we said earlier, if we have a medical term, first we have to break it down into its parts and then give the meanings of the individual parts. And after that, we start with the suffix. So here, if you look at number 1, it says give the meaning of the suffix first, if available. Of course, if there is a suffix, then we start with the suffix first and then go back to the beginning, to the prefix and root. Number 2, then the meaning of the prefix if available. Again, sometimes there might not be a prefix. So if there is a suffix and a root, we start with the suffix and then go to the root when giving the meaning, of course. So the final thing here in number 3, we add the meaning of the root. Look at this example. The diagram is clear. The same term we discussed earlier, which is perineuritis. Now, peri here is the prefix, ner is the nerve, and itis is the suffix. So there are 3 parts here. Now, what is the meaning of peri? It is above it. You can see that. It means around. The meaning of ner, above it again, it means nerve. And the meaning of itis is inflammation. And if you look at the numbers given here in black, so number 1 is given for the suffix, which is itis. So we give we put the meaning of the suffix at the beginning. It should be number 1 when giving the full meaning. So inflammation comes at the beginning. Then peri, which is the prefix, number 2. It should come next. And the number 3, which is the nerve, comes last. So the full meaning will be inflammation around a nerve. Now the note which is at the bottom here, I think we mentioned it before. It says it is not necessary to have 3 parts in medical terms all the time. We said that it's not necessary to have them all in one term. Sometimes you can find a medical term of a root, sometimes of a root and a suffix, sometimes a prefix and a suffix. Sometimes even you can get 2 roots in one medical term with suffix and prefix. So it depends on the medical term itself. There is no one way of having a medical term. Now on page 3 you can see a list of roots, and you have to learn these by heart. And you have to start from now. As I told you, don't delay things. Because if you delay things, then every lesson there are new words, and then they will compile, and it's difficult for you in the end to learn them by heart all. So it is better to start from today. And many of these roots, suffixes, and prefixes will be repeated. So once you learn them by heart now, there is no need to study them maybe let's say with much concentration later, because you will learn them by heart. But it is better to keep in touch with the material that we go through. So here, as you can see, the note, you have to learn the parts and their meanings by heart. Unless you do that, you cannot give the meanings of the terms.